Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of the Indie Show. Yes, we are talking Usagi again. I actually managed to find a date that worked for these guys, which is a little bit tough, but it's a good panel, so they're worth it. So let's get them in here before my dog starts barking and going crazy, because that's what he seems to want to do tonight. So first, we got Jimmy, the Geek Aficionado. What's going on, man?
How's it going?
It is going. Had better Mondays, but...
What are you doing to that poor dog? He's been whining all night.
I don't know. He's sitting here laying next to me, staring at me, barking. So
Did you feed him?
Yeah. So he's being ridiculous. We got White Whale Comics. What's going on, Alex?
Hey, buddy. What's up, pup?
And we've got Cthulouie over here.
Oh.
Hello, all. You muted yourself now, JP.
Are you sure we shouldn't reschedule? Oh,
we're talking volume 2 of Usagi Yojimbo, which goes through the first 6 issues of the actual Usagi Yojimbo story, as originally produced by Fantagraphic Comics before the move to Dark Horse, and that series started. Actually, they went to Fantagraphics, and then they went to Mirage Studios with the Turtles, and then they went to Dark Horse Comics after that. And JP's back.
We're gonna try again. I don't know why he just wants to bark at me tonight. So he doesn't normally do that. He normally just lays here, but he's all fired up about something.
He's just excited we actually got this together.
That might be the case.
You mentioned something about rabbits, and he got all excited.
Well, that is true. He does love to chase a rabbit. So, now he's moving. Maybe he's just finally done with me. Yeah, I think he's done with me. So, he didn't get what he wanted. He got frustrated. He'd like, when he gets mad, he turns, goes like 4 feet, lays, and just faces away from me. Like, I'm done. So, ridiculous dog. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. But, it's live. What are you going to do? So, yes, we are talking Usagi Yojimbo Book 2. I think Jimmy already told you this is issues 1 through 6 of the original Usagi run. So, Jimmy, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts about this? This is the origin plus a little bonus.
Yeah, that was the great part about this, is that the first issue. So we had the first volume, which went through your first appearance of Usagi. Where picks up where you find him actually being a Ronin, and in this first 4 issues, it's an 8-part story that explains why, like where he comes from. And how he came, kind of how he became to be a swordsman, and then eventually a Ronin. And it's all surrounding a story of a samurai that he kills in the first couple pages of the story of issue 1. Yeah, he's squaring off against this. What is he? Was he like a warthog? Yeah, he's like a warthog. Right? Yeah. You digging in your shorts there, Will?
Yeah, I was trying to find my copy, but I thought it was right here, but clearly it's not, so that's all right. Everybody's seen it before. You know what it looks like. I was just trying to...
There it is.
Yeah.
You got one. So.
I got one somewhere.
Usagi.
I have seen you show it off, so that's... Yeah. So, Alec, what do you think of this volume, this origin story, just in big picture before we get into details?
Yeah, so, I mean, clearly the big difference is that the first trade we read is all very short stories. And this starts off with a much longer story that even though it is very segmented by the way it's told, it is a much grander, more epic tale. So the storytelling off the bat is different, which, you do get some of the shorter form stories at the end. So if that's what you enjoyed about the first series a lot, then you still get some of that. But I really like this volume a lot.
Yeah, because the original stories were very like tryouts, in different different volumes, right, or different titles, right? We had the Critters and Albedo.
Yep.
And then we finally actually get one serial story out of out of Stan, which is the origin.
And not to dive too much into the details of it, but it was pretty clever the way he did it, where he runs into the jerky samurai that he dealt with in the first one, who tricked him into paying for his bar tab.
Yeah.
And he kind of tells him the story. So it's, he is recounting it in a way that makes sense for him to recount it, rather than him just kind of narrating it to the viewer, or the reader rather.
Very true. Yeah. No, it's a good story method.
And it also kind of, you get some like really fun banter in between the story as well with them, which, because it is, compared to a lot of the stuff in the first volume, it's a much more serious story, but you still get that lighthearted stuff in between with their interactions.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I was trying to find his name in here. I can't remember his name.
Oh, which one? The guy he kills, or the guy he's telling the story to?
The rhino guy?
The rhino, yeah. Like Genichi.
Genichi, yeah. That's right at the beginning when he first sees him. Louis, what about you, man? What were your just impressions of this?
It surprised me, especially with the way the first volume went, how it was just like, as they were saying, just kind of one-off stories. For it to just be the full origin just surprised me, because I thought it'd be more sprinkled in, how like we got little glimpses of him in the first one, like his past, but he was just like, no, you get to know all of it now. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was it was a little bit different than it was from before.
I mean, I'm glad that he didn't stretch it out too much, because like really the story isn't about his mysterious past. Like, he's not this unknown, unnamed character. He is. It's more about his journeys than it is his past. So, I mean, based on the first volume, I totally agree that like it was surprising that they just threw everything at you. But I think it's better off for it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was a smart decision. So like, we weren't just thinking about it the whole time. It was like, here's everything that he went through. Now we can get back to where he's going currently.
Well, and that's the point of, part of the whole story is that he's not actually going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
He's a wanderer. So there's creativity in the tales, of just him wandering around, and this first 4 issues with an 8-piece story arc, that all takes place in the same day, relatively the same location.
Yeah, and it also, because he's the wanderer, it really opens up the options for some characters. I think we talked about this in the last episode, but some stories being very grounded in more of a reality-based situation, and some like much more in a mythological, kind of fantastical realm. Yeah,
there's a couple of stories in the at the end in the 6th book of the story that are very like creature focused, right? And it's more like the whole magical mythology of Japan. My favorite's definitely the last one.
Yeah.
I
really enjoyed that they don't like. Sometimes you can build to like the background. I enjoyed that he kind of just like, okay, I'm getting this out of the way. This is where he came from, why he is who he is. Then let's just tell stories going forward. So I enjoyed the fact that he didn't kind of like hide the background for that long. I don't think it was necessary. I think it was, and probably one of the few times I would guess we get 4-issue story arcs on Usagi. I don't know that for sure, but it seems just the way he tells the story. So yeah, and then it goes kind of at the end goes back into the, the little one-off short stories, random situations that he finds himself in as he's wandering around. So I really enjoyed that part of it as well.
One other initial observation from me is that I really felt like his art like took a huge leap forward between the last issue of the end of that first volume and the first issue of this volume. I mean, he probably had a little bit more time and he was a little more invested in it because it was like his series. But it like some of the, I mean, just from even the first page of this issue, it's just, you know, like you saw hints of this in of like the level of detail and the layouts and stuff, but it really just kind of jumped up to a really lovely stuff.
It did a great job with the backgrounds and the scenery, especially in the first two. The first issue, those first two parts of the story, where he's working with the master.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I really enjoy. I also feel like it sets up him as a character really well because, you know, they're sent to go to this place to train, and he sees an opportunity to potentially train with somebody better, and he takes it. Like, whereas, you know, his friend from his village is like, no, this is what we're doing. We're supposed to go here. And I do think that kind of sets him up, you know, a little bit more as a character, that he's always been a little bit more independent, always a little bit more of a risk taker, willing to, you know, do what he thought was going to be the best, even if it wasn't necessarily what he was told, and follow his own code and his own, rather than just what others are telling him to do. I did enjoy that part.
Yeah, and that was actually something I wanted to talk about, where, you know, not only it is not only that he sees that it is someone better and more honorable, but it is something that like he has to really try for, because the guy doesn't like want to teach him at first and kind of gives him a hard time, and kind of, you know, Mr. Miyagi's him a bit where he's like, you know, doesn't think he's really training him for a while. But, you know, the other guy, his buddy is just like, oh, this guy's washed up. He doesn't know what he's doing. You know, why would you go with him? So not only does he have the discipline, but he has the foresight to see, oh, this is the path that I want to take. That's right for me. Because obviously it's presented that it is the better path, but who's to say that it's really necessarily the better path for everyone?
Right.
But it certainly was for him, and he recognized that and kind of went after it and stuck to his guns or his sword.
Yeah, I mean, he gets, you know, it is a little bit of the Mr. Miyagi thing. He gets turned away repeatedly, and he just keeps determined that, no, this is the path. I think this is the right way. So, Louis, what do you think about that part of the story, or his arc there at the beginning?
Very Karate Kid. That's what I was thinking initially while reading it. But I mean, Karate Kid probably pulls from, you know,
a lot of
everything that's like this for it. So
I mean, this came out this same year in '86.
So who copied who is the real question.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they probably both stole from something, previous.
Oh yeah,
Kurosawa or something.
Yeah, well, everyone steals from Kurosawa.
But that's something I really like about Usagi is he seems to be I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. He understands his responsibilities, but then when it comes to his own like integrity, no, I don't know if that'd be the right word. I'm losing myself here. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
He's fiercely independent, and he knows what's right for him, even though he knows the overall responsibilities that he has. Does that make any sense, or am I just kind of...
certainly has like a very intense personal moral compass, and that is...
Thank you, yes.
Is kind of like paramount to everything else. Mm-hmm. So if he gets a job that is presented to him as one thing, and he realizes that it is something that goes against his moral compass, he then doesn't have a problem kind of switching sides.
Yeah, he's gonna follow his compass, whether he, you know, if he took a job and gave his word, well, that if the job turns out not to be what it's supposed to be, then he's gonna follow his compass over his word on a job or something necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
his personal honor. I guess he likes to talk about honor a lot. So
well, that's significant to the Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly at that time during feudal Japan.
And there's that whole repetition of his teacher telling him, your sword is like your soul.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great kind of analogy of saying like this is not part of you, this is you.
Something to add on top of that, something that I find curious is how he like almost works against himself with what's the girl he likes? Is it Mariko? Is that her name?
Mariko, yeah.
The girl from the village, yeah.
So how later on she's kind of like, oh, obviously you're going to stay here, right? And he's like, no, he's bound by his responsibility, but then he's almost going against what he wants.
Yeah.
So it's like, why there? Why are you choosing to follow that like code now when you so fiercely and strongly want to be with her? But then at other times, like when he's with his friends, like, no, I'm going to go learn from this guy. Like, what makes him break away from it?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite pieces of that story is when they're at the tournament, and his teacher said, "You remember my teachings?" "Yes, sensei. The samurai follows the code of Bushido, and honor is above all things. And it is technique and spiritual strength that counts. Winning is unimportant. Good. And if you don't win, you'll beat me into a pulp." You've learned well.
So yeah. So what do we think about the teacher? We've talked a little bit about his choice to follow this teacher, and that he gets kind of Mr. Miyagi'd at first. Well, what do we think about the teacher, Jimmy? What do you think about his sensei?
Oh, I enjoyed him as a character. I mean, he's fantastic in the way that he's portrayed. He doesn't want to teach anybody because the people he's teaching are idiots, right? They all want to just go out and fight, right? And that's not what he's about. And Usagi recognizes that that he has that he's a man who has honor, and that he wants to learn from him rather than just be another one of the kids that he was beating up. And he makes, such an impression on him that he's willing to stay out there day and night, waiting for an opportunity rather than actually leave and, go back and do something that he knows isn't right. But the teachers, I'm sure, is no different than any other strict teacher, who wants to craft a student into the right form and the right teachings rather than just going the easy way. I mean, Yoda was no different, right?
Yeah.
No. What about you? What about you, Alec? What do you think about the teacher?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, at first he basically tells him like, "No, I'm not going to teach you," because I think, to Jimmy's point, he wanted to make sure that Usagi was, the right kind of student for Usagi's sake, but also for the teacher's sake, because he didn't want to. He's like old and cranky. He doesn't want to waste his time teaching someone who's not going to stick with it.
Yeah.
So he needed Usagi to prove it to both of them that he was willing to do what it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting kind of way for him to go about it, where he wasn't like sitting back and laughing the whole time every time he got the better of him by hitting him over the head or anything like that. He was, he's not like the what's his name, Pai Wei or whatever in Kill Bill, who's just like treating Beatrix Kiddo like a brat just because he likes kind of feeling superior to her. It wasn't that. It was that, he's like, if you're going to be my disciple, I need to know that you are not worthy to carry on my name, but like worthy to know what I know.
Yeah. That you're going to actually see it through and be, and approach it the right way. Like that you're not just here because you want glory. You're here to actually learn and be, I
don't want to, I'm not training a killer.
Yeah,
exactly.
Louis, what about you? What do you think of the teacher?
Oh, I loved him. But I mean, it's just like he's Yoda, he's Miyagi. It's that same storytelling style that is just sprinkled in throughout a lot of things. And I think just kind of seeing it coming from the culture it was like originally kind of from, it just rings different to me. It's like, oh, this feels more like the right way. I don't know how else to put it. It's just it's cool to see it actually being utilized that way.
Yeah.
And also, there's a kind of a third layer of it, which is the author's respect for, we talked about this last time too, the author's respect for the samurai culture and for the, for what it means to have that honor and that respect and that training. So I think there's a little bit of Stan in there as well, where he's saying, in order to truly understand and respect this way of life, this is what it takes.
Yeah. And I think you see that because, you could look at this book and you could look at that initial cover and you see a rabbit with a sword. And it's like, okay, this could be goofy. This could be a lot of different things. But like Stan doesn't really there's humor, but he's really like.
But it's never not taken seriously.
No, yeah, it's always very serious the way he's approaching it. And yeah, he's a rabbit, but it's really just like maybe because he likes to draw the characters, but the character is, not just meant to be a silly rabbit. That's just the style he's using to tell the story, the characters he's using to tell the story. It could easily be all human characters. He just likes to draw rabbits. So I don't know, but there's a seriousness to Usagi that this is not. It's not really. It's fine, but it's not really like a kid's story. This is a very adult approach to telling, a samurai story, even though it probably is somewhat kid friendly. But
I read it when I was 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's like inappropriate for a child, but it's certainly like a lot of things that we're talking about would definitely go over the head of a kid reading it, probably.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe where I was going. It's fine for kids,
it's like a Pixar movie.
Yeah, but there's a lot of more serious tones and deeper messages that maybe most kids wouldn't necessarily pick up the first time they read it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like them being anthropomorphic animals really has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Like it almost feels like that's just what he used to draw people into it.
Yeah.
It's like, is that a rabbit with a sword? I guess I'll pick that up and see what that's about, and then it's just another Ronin story, and it's really good and it's fun.
And it's
like,
not
I never would have picked that up if it wasn't a rabbit with a sword. Like that's just how some people, you get them in.
Right. I was actually going to ask if any of you know, I unfortunately don't, why he chose to do it that way, because it's not like something like Mouse where it's very intentionally symbolic about what animals are used in the story. It just seems like,
or like Animal Farm.
Right. It's just, some people are rabbits, some people are warthogs, some people are rhinos. It's just this world where animals are humanized. So I don't know if it was because, turtles and stuff like that were the big indie thing at the time, and he said, well, maybe I'll just make it a rabbit, or if he, like he said, liked drawing rabbits, or if it was because he had some other meaning behind it. I don't know. That'd be interesting to find out.
But it wasn't just turtles. It was adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters as well.
Yeah.
And Boris the Bear.
And Boris the Bear, yeah. And then not too long after, the Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
I actually don't know that one.
It was a cartoon. Street Sharks.
Yeah, I do remember that one. So yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting choice by him to go down this route. It would be curious to see what he would say, like how much he would, whether it would just be as simple as, I'd rather draw animals and creature than draw people, or if it was, a more purposeful choice. It would be interesting. Or if it was just a way to, like, I think Jimmy said initially, or maybe it was Louis, I forget now, like draw attention, like, oh, what's this? To get people to like pay attention to it rather than just a regular Ronin story or whatever that maybe they've seen.
Yeah, you see a samurai on the shelves, you might look past it, but if you see a rabbit samurai in the shelves, you say, "Oh, that's different."
Let's also consider that. I mean, given the time frame, of the mid '80s, right? We're still at a point where comics are still more geared towards a younger crowd, right, or at least a more adolescent crowd. Sure, there's adults who who'd been reading stuff for a long period of time, right? But as we got into the Bronze Age of comics, we saw more adult themed stuff, particularly coming out of Marvel and DC, right, with the darker Batman and the grittier stories that are coming through that, and then more of the occult coming through both of those imprints. So there wasn't a lot that was geared towards kids at the time, and I think a lot of these other publishers were maybe bringing it back a little bit. So yeah, you've got an adult themed story, but told in a way that can be appreciated by children. It's not it's in black and white, so it's not overly graphic with the use of blood or anything like that, and you get to pass on an ancient heritage that's not widely known through a book that's a passion for the creator.
Yeah, I mean, especially at the time, it wasn't something that was widely known, especially to American audiences. I don't expect compared to now, where anime is such a big thing, and so there's that. Japanese culture is more kind of, because the internet and everything is more ubiquitous here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you talk about the violence, like even the scenes that are quote unquote more violent, because the style is so cartoony, nothing seems graphic.
Right.
Yeah. Like when they die, it's like a little skull, in a word, in a thought bubble,
or they're like tongues out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, Alec, about people not really knowing much about the culture until anime. I mean, you got stuff like Ninja Scroll, which I really attached to because I had been reading stuff like this when I was younger and watching Kurosawa movies, with my dad, and being able to see those images, right, in that culture. So yeah, when they released Ninja Scroll, I mean, that was huge for me. I love that movie.
Me too. Super hyper violent.
Oh, absolutely. Like really inappropriate for children.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it came out when I was actually out of high school. So
yeah, no, I was still in high school when that came out, and
so
it's great.
Jump back to the story just a little bit. So we talked a little bit, about his education and learning from the teacher. I love the moment, you guys were talking about the moment when he gets to the tournament. I love the one where he's been ambushing him and he realizes he's behind the tree, and he I know you're back there, and then the teacher just stays hidden. He finally oh, I guess maybe not, and he walks up and goes against his initial instinct, and he's just what are you doing? He's you knew. Why would you let your guard down?
Right.
It just their interactions, I just think, are so well portrayed. What do you guys think about the tournament? We talked about a little bit his setup for the tournament, but him showing his skill and fighting his old friend. Louis, what did you think about that? Let's start with you this time.
I thought it was pretty cool. I liked so in the first volume, he goes back home and his friend, they seem to not be on the best of terms. And they kind of give a little hint, but it's why do you not like him that much? I don't get it. Was it just because, you married the girl he liked? And it's oh no, this whole situation went down. Yeah. We learn a little about who he is as a rabbit, not a person. But I just thought that was pretty cool to open that up and see what was going on there.
Yeah, that he kind of sets himself up because he said, his teacher isn't asking it of him, but he says he'll leave this if he loses, he'll leave in disgrace, and he basically makes a promise that
he can't walk out of it.
That he can't walk out of, but he really didn't need to make either. A bunch of other people had lost, and there was no disgrace for them. It was kind of Alec, what do you think about that and the kind of the setup of how those two interact in their relationship.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I mean, it was clear that they had a complicated relationship, that it wasn't so simple as just like, we were fighting over a girl.
Right.
But again, I hate to keep comparing it to this, but very Karate Kid, where he goes into this tournament as kind of like the lone student of this samurai, whereas this other guy is part of this whole crew, and the leader of this other crew was like, oh, we need to take him out, sweep the leg. And I think in both those cases, Karate Kid being one of my favorite movies, probably why I responded to this so well as well, is that it only accentuates his triumph in the fact that he had all these odds stacked against him. That they were not only more people against him, but they were actively trying to destroy him.
Right.
And he still came out on top because he just was that much better. But not because, it's the line Mr. Miyagi says. He's like, it's not how much karate you know, it's, how it's the quality of the, no, not the exact line, but, it's the quality of the karate you do know that matters. And it's the same sort of thing where it's like, maybe he doesn't know as much because he has trained differently, but like what he knows is of such a high caliber and he has not only been trained so well, but again, he responds so well and so seriously to the training. He takes it so seriously that, it pays off for him. So I thought it was a really great kind of payoff to the story. Well, I mean, that's not the payoff because, there's still quite a bit of the story left, but
yeah. But no, I agree. I think it's and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but maybe I'll let Jimmy give his thoughts first. But I like the fact that I like the fact that he shows it, like his friend is still like a serious, like not necessarily his equal, but maybe it gave him his best fight of the day.
Oh yeah.
And I love that we get a moment that I guess, because I haven't been watching it, but I feel like it's what a lot of what people are loving about Cobra Kai is we get them trying to like come to terms with each other.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. It's part of this story. Jimmy, what do you think about his buddy and the fight and the aftermath and everything?
I think that particular part of the story is probably the most important part of the entire 8-part segment. It's the culmination of all of his training, right? In his level of skill. It's how he gets his swords.
Yeah.
It's the failure, or not the failure, but the defeat of his friend and rival, right? But you don't understand that, how he was a rival from before when you read the earlier story when he goes back to his town and, Kenichi is married, the girl he liked. They both grew up together and they both liked the girl, but he got the girl because he stayed, and he stayed because he failed and he lost to Usagi and was such a braggart about, winning, boasted so much that he was going to like, I'll leave in shame if I lose. And he did leave in shame. And you see, the cause of that, explained out in the rest of the story, or later in the story where, he's drunk at an inn and then they both go back to save the village because the bandits are coming. And it just, I think that's the culminating moment of the entire 8-part arc that plays the most into not just who the character is going forward, but into his origin and everything that you've seen in the past already. Because he won, he became, he was in the service of, I forget the character's name.
Lord Mifune? I don't know how they pronounce it. Is it
Mizuno?
Mifune?
Mifune.
Yeah.
Lord Mifune. And then obviously it shows at the end, when they're in the Adachigahara Plains, which is like one of the first stories was the Demon of Adachigahara, where, they had died. They lost the battle, and he escaped after his master was killed. So there's so much that just kind of comes out of this one scene of this tournament. So this one part of it. So I thought,
and
it was
again,
most impressionable.
Again, like what I was saying earlier about how, if his buddy had gone with him to train with this teacher, he, similarly to Johnny, like if Johnny had trained under Mr. Miyagi, to keep using that analogy, like Johnny wouldn't have learned anything from Mr. Miyagi. Like
Probably not. Yeah.
For better or worse, Johnny needed to learn from Cobra Kai, and Usagi's friend needed to learn from this other teacher. And it's not
sometimes
saying
you learn more from failure than from success.
Right. And not to say, like, clearly he was also a very accomplished swordsman. So again, what I was saying earlier about like how this was the right path for Usagi, but might not have been the right path for everybody.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The dog agrees too.
Yeah. Or vehemently disagrees.
Yeah. You're full of shit, Whale.
I mean, probably
As
right.
many have said.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also dig the one-off stories. So I'm gonna keep that until we get to the last one.
Well, before we do that, so we do finally get like eventually him meeting the guy that he fought, and we get the whole how that played out. His betrayal,
right? Why he's fighting this guy at the beginning in the first place.
I was thinking that when I was reading it, I was thinking that maybe he was the reason why the other lord had turned traitor and started attacking their forces, but come to find out he just ran off, right? Which was dishonorable and disgraceful, but didn't help things.
Right. Like he didn't instigate the problem, but he certainly exacerbated it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not having that heavy sword there to help.
And, so, I mean, you understand why Usagi had a problem with this guy.
Yeah.
Because he basically left him to die.
And it goes back to the honor.
Right. But it is more, right. It's more than that. It's not that he left him to die. I'm sure he was angry about that, but he probably would have allowed that to go, be a bygone, be bygone. But the fact that he betrayed the honor of his post and of his sword, he betrayed his soul. So
yeah, he realizes that they're in trouble, and he who was supposedly the right hand man, like the one who actually even recruited Usagi, who was like his personal guard.
Yeah,
and he just when the going got really tough, he was like, "I'm out, I'm done." Like, and yeah, that definitely goes against Usagi's code for sure.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about like differences in people where, we mentioned at the top of the show how Usagi would maybe pick his own moral code above his job. I mean, really, that's what this guy did. His moral code is just maybe a little wonky, but he picked fighting another day rather than fighting against, giving his life for something he didn't believe in anymore, basically.
Sure, but I mean, that's I think possibly the difference in the teachings, right? Maybe he wasn't following the full Bushido code, where you don't desert your master, right? That's dishonorable. Yeah. Where he did.
I'm not defending his actions.
Oh yeah, I get you. Yeah, just but explaining like differently between maybe his upbringing was a little bit different, or his training for that matter.
Okay. Anybody else got anything on the origin story before we move on to the fun stuff at the end?
I really like how at the end he stuck him with the bill again.
Kinda, yeah.
Didn't he?
kind of left it.
I haven't read it. I haven't read it in a minute, but that's how he.
Well, basically he offers knowing that Usagi's gonna pay. Basically, it's like so, like, oh, I was gonna pay. He kind of does that,
Yeah, I can't drink if you're gonna use, if you're gonna pay with money that's,
Yeah, right.
From somebody else.
Yeah, because he'd taken his money, so he's like,
from a dead man.
A dead man's money. All right, so let's move on to what we got. We got the Kappa. We got Zilla. We got a few of these. Like, which one do you guys want to start with? Of the little end stories, the Silk story. Which one?
It was Zilla. It's the first one.
Zilla's the last.
Or in mine it's the middle. So there you go.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Yeah. So no, Zilla is
after.
from issue 6.
Yeah.
Silk,
In the trade I got, Kappa's the first one.
Yeah, Kappa is the first one in my trade also.
oh wow, that's crazy. They flipped them. So yeah. So in issue 5 is Silk Road, and issue 6 is Kappa and Zilla.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, mine it goes Kappa, Zilla, Silk Road.
Yeah, I have Kappa too. I forgot about Kappa.
There's the Kappa in color.
I'm fine talking about Silk Road first, actually, because
Okay.
I think the other two, to me, have like kind of a yin and yang.
Yeah.
That I kind of wanted to touch on, but to me, Silk Road was it. It's fine. It's that. It's good. I don't want to. Me saying anything by Stan Sakai is fine is still like heads and shoulders above most things, but like
Right.
I'm comparing it in a vacuum to the rest of the books. Where it's kind of like the story we've seen before, where he goes in and he does the honorable thing to help a village, and there's this kind of tyrant guy running this silk village and paying his workers poorly, and Usagi comes in and it turns out the guy's a coward, and he kind of in the face of death, Usagi kind of convinces him to pay up and help his workers live a better better life for all their hard work.
Yeah. I would agree. There's not a ton there, I don't think. It is a pretty straightforward, man comes into the village, helps the people over the guy in charge.
Yeah.
And,
it felt like something very similar to something that was in the first trade.
Yeah.
Not specifically, but, just kind of like that same kind of idea of like.
Well, and the kind of like the other samurai who's supposedly being paid to protect the village and is really just a faker also. Like.
So, I mean, that's about all I have to say about that one.
Anybody have anything to add to that one? No.
Not really. I mean, I agree. It's contrived from what he's done in the past, but it's not uncommon to, you see the same thing with Lone Wolf and Cub. You see the same thing with, Yojimbo. That.
It's not an uncommon theme in this genre.
No.
Exactly, that master samurai.
Yeah, I mean, it's a theme that was stolen for a lot of Western movies, and kind of a very similar kind of thing. All right. What about? Do you guys want to do Kappa last or Zilla last? Which one do you care?
Doesn't matter.
End on Zilla.
Okay, so the Kappa one was interesting. I thought it because you see him like, do something that like I think anybody would do. He uses, he finds these wild cucumbers and that are planted there, and he's like, oh, this is odd, but sure. And he uses them to kind of pay the toll. Doesn't really think nothing about it, and to get by this Kappa. And then he finds out that like they were meant for somebody else that was coming home. And I mean, it's not like he did anything wrong, but yet
come on, you put a sign there for geez.
Yeah, I mean,
right? It's not for you, man.
Well, or even a warning that this thing is there, and it's just like, oh, and yet he goes back to try to help this guy because he feels like
he kind of left him for dead.
Yeah.
you're missing on something. So he doesn't go back for no reason, right? He goes to this. He sees this farmhouse up ahead once he passes the the toll toad, and there's an old woman there who's got a fire and talking about her son's coming, and she's like, "How'd you get past the cap?" "Oh, I gave him the cucumbers." "No, those were for my son." So he's got to go back to rescue him when he's under the thrall of the kappa.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the kappa is a mythological kind of demon creature who has a bowl in its head filled with water, which it spills out. It kind of like loses its power, but it will transfix you and make you just drown yourself, more or less. Correct?
Yeah, trying to get a good her little kappa dude here. The focus maybe.
Yeah, this might be a little bit.
There you go. Yeah, you got him on the front of yours there, Jimmy.
Yeah, so we got the little. This is an impression in his skull, that's filled with water. So when he comes out of the water, and if the water spills out of there, it basically, he can die, right? I'm guessing it's probably because his brain's no longer hydrated or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he tricks him into he knocks the water out and gets him to let go of the boy coming home.
But I mean, it is not an easy fight for Usagi, as you see on that cover. Where, he almost dies fighting this thing.
Yeah.
Probably his harshest competitor.
For
that
sure.
we've seen so far, I would think easily. Yeah.
Well,
He pretty much has dispatched every other threat without breaking a sweat.
He seems to have these difficulties actually when it comes to the more
supernatural.
Thank you. Supernatural adversaries, right? With the demon of Adachigahara and that creature from the village.
Oh, the cat-like creature or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like mortal man doesn't seem to match up to him very well, but these extra powerful creatures tend to be like things that can actually stand with him and comparatively. So I thought it was interesting. I don't know that there was a ton here. He does leave the kappa alive, but
he finds out that the person who had warned him that her son was coming home was actually dead,
that's right,
and had died a year ago. And so I think part of that is that the cucumbers that were growing out of season were her reaching out to keep her son safe, knowing that there's these creatures out there.
Yeah.
And then sending Usagi when she finds that he had taken the cucumbers.
Yeah, that he had inadvertently used her son's passage. Lou, you were pretty quiet on that one. Did you have anything to add to the little kappa story?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's funny, I kind of forgot about it, but remembering it, I'm like, oh, I really liked that one. Yeah. Like with what Jimmy said about how she was dead the whole time, like that thing, and then but the cucumbers were her growing them out of season for him.
Yeah.
And then even Usagi's just how unusual this time of year.
Yeah.
It was just a fun story overall. It's like the Halloween special or something.
It was kind of like a little Halloween story, yeah.
Timely.
That's funny.
All right, so then we get Zilla. So what do you guys think of the Zilla story? We'll start with Alec this time. What do you think, Alec?
Well, so the reason I said there's a bit of a yin and yang for these two stories for me is because it is I wouldn't say the same story, but a similar idea of him coming across this bizarre thing and it being some sort of creature, and that at the end, they kind of go their separate ways.
Right.
Whereas Kappa is a very, for Usagi Yojimbo, it's a very serious story, right? It's not filled with much humor. It is life and death, and it is literally both with the dead mother and the guy almost drowning, and then Usagi almost dying. But there's not a lot of humor in it.
No.
Whereas Zilla is the exact opposite. It's just like a goofball romp with a punchline at the end. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see these two things back to back, where like to show that his kind of his breadth in his ability to tell stories, quite literally, side by side of something that I felt like was pretty similar.
And they are in the same issue as well. So So
Sure,
in the
it was
original
intentional.
publication, yeah.
For those that are wondering, Zilla is, we see the egg hatch, and we get a little little baby Godzilla here.
But you don't find that out until, yes, if
You see the profile, yeah.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit easier. I can get this a
because
wider open.
The last line, so like clearly, it looks like Godzilla, but the last line is Usagi walking away, and he says, "Perhaps we'll meet again, Zilla. I'm on my way to the city. You should try your luck there someday."
Oh yeah. Well, even before that, he's like, after,
right here.
After Zilla dispatches the guys, and the only word he can say is like Zilla, and he's like,
"What are you? Are you a Godzilla? Godzilla."
So good.
Yeah, because he firebombs him.
Yeah, so basically the story is that he's at these hot springs, and there's this egg, and there's these bunch of drunkards who follow him there, and they want to kind of eat the egg, but Usagi saves the egg, and then turns out that it's Godzilla, who then in turn saves Usagi because he is enjoying the hot springs when these drunkards come back to try to kind of exact their revenge on him. Really a fun little story. Again, like not especially different in tone than a lot of the other stories, but just like the payoff was there.
Yeah. But again, paying respect to the Japanese culture, for not just their history, but to something that's
Pop
very
culture.
very pop culture, very very close to the Japanese, and that's Godzilla. So yeah, it was kind of tongue in cheek, with some of the comments in there, but it was a cool and fun story. Did you guys have this one, The Test?
I don't think so.
I just noticed it after Zilla, and I'm like, I didn't see this one, because the single issues have backup stories in them by different creators, and they're not Usagi related. They're just other random things. So I was kind of passing this one off, because they have like stuff like Digger Duckbill, right? But just realized that there's actually another Usagi story at the back of this. So I wonder if that'll be in volume 3. Interesting.
no, I did not have that in this one either, or in the volume I was reading. So
Well, it's definitely part of like when he's with his master at the beginning, like this is like during his training. So it wouldn't have been after. I don't think it would have been after, but I'll have to check that out.
Unless it was just kind of slipped into the training story somehow.
Yeah, quite possibly. I'd have to take a look at that.
okay, well, we're coming up on our hour. Any final thoughts on this volume, Jimmy? You want any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like I said, I really enjoyed the story of the samurai 8-part story, that tells his origin, and it really ties in the whole volume 1 back to volume 2, and kind of which is great because we know that those stories were originally published in a variety of different magazines, right? Kind of all over the place. So having them in that volume and then going into this story in a in his own series, right? And then making reference to other things that happened in referencing the other magazines that those came out in, right? Whether like the story that has to do with Kenichi, referencing back to Critters 10 and 11, where we had the homecoming story, two-part homecoming story, kind of helps to fill out the character a bit more, flesh that out, and be able to provide a bit from the past and then moving forward as well. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the small stories. It's crafty writing. It's solid pencils. Being that it's black and white with just inking done over it, and by the top inker in the business at the time, according to Sergio Aragones, because Stan's job before this was inking Gru the Wanderer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of really good, fun story. I definitely like the use of the different animals. Usually you see like badgers and foxes are sometimes the bad guys, and pigs and such. So it's not too innocuous to the character choices, or at least the animal choices when you're reading it. But yeah, definitely a lot of fun.
Alec, what were your final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the first volume was a very enjoyable book. This one, I think, really kind of shows why Stan Sakai is a master of cartooning and sequential storytelling, because it's just it for me took like such a leap forward as far as quality. And not to say that the last one was bad, because we all clearly enjoyed it. But to me, this was just, like I said at the beginning, not just visually, but storytelling was kind of head and shoulders above. So I had read some of this before, but I've not read like all of Usagi, because it's a lot. But he's just, and couldn't be a more sweet, gentle, lovely person as well. Not that it has anything to do with it, but I just, always want to shout out creators when they're actually like polite, kind people, because you meet so many of them, or you sometimes meet them and there's like, oh, I feel badly about being a fan of yours now. But no, like he's the kind of person who like makes you want to like his work even more, if that's possible, because he's just
Tony Cage.
I've not met him, but
Louis, what about you, man?
You tell him.
It kind of he was playing with like expectations, I guess, a little bit, because after reading the first volume, I just expected more of the same, just like kind of one-off stories that just gave us hints of Usagi. And for him just to go one full long story, I was like, oh, okay, I didn't think this is what we'd be doing, but I'm glad you did it, because it was really good. And then he still left so much untouched in doing that. From the first volume, he set up so much, and now we have a whole nother volume and we didn't even deal with any of that, so now there's still so much more to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to him as a creator, because he very easily could have done these little one-shot stories in Albedo and Critters or whatever, and kind of left them at that and gone and done something else. But I very clearly like intentionally created these paths that he wanted to go down and tell these other stories, because it seems very intentional. If it was him going back and looking at his stories and saying, oh, I could explore this more, then that just is like the luckiest thing in the world, because it really seems super intentional to me.
So yeah, I would agree. I thought this was I don't know what I expected from the second volume. I thought this exceeded my expectations, and I really enjoyed the first one. I love that, yeah, like you said, he was telling these little stories, short stories in the ends of other books, and like didn't know if this was going anywhere, yet he was setting something up. And so I really enjoyed this. I'm going to wrap this up because I don't know what's going on with this dog. But I want to thank you guys for joining me. You guys, anything you want to promote before we get out of here? Jimmy?
Yeah, I had I dropped something pretty large yesterday on my channel. I'm attempting to do something rather big scale for my collecting, and I'm trying to increase the quality of my my collection rather than the quantity by removing some books that I don't really intend to read again and passing them on to people who are more likely to read them so that they continue to get some love. And I'm going after some really big game hunting right now. So it's the Grail run. It's 60 Grails in 60 months. So I'm trying to, within a 5-year period, acquire 60 very large, notable books for my collection. I showed these off yesterday, which included the first Black Canary and the Origin of the Joker. These are the first 2 books that I got on that path. So there's a lot more coming from that, and I'm going to bring everybody along on my trip, on my journey for this, and hopefully it's a fun one.
Alec, you got anything coming up?
Got book club at the beginning of each month. This next one in November is going to be a week delayed, I think, but otherwise, theoretically wrapping up D&D with Big Will's campaign in the next little while, and I might try my hand at DMing again. We'll see. But other than that, I don't have anything planned for my channel. Surprise, surprise.
Louis?
I really don't do anything. Well, on YouTube at least. I'll talk about it. Maybe I'll do something. Who knows? Other than that, happy Halloween to everybody.
Okay. Well, I said last night I had.
You didn't let him talk, man.
You know what? I'm going to wrap it up. So, thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.